What's going on, Jets fans? It's your boy DT back with another practice recap, day 7 for the New York Jets. It is officially the second week of training camp. It is their third day in pads during practice. So now we've had 4 days of no pads, 3 days with pads. AG is certainly putting his money where his mouth is when he said he's going to bring physicality to this team, and we're seeing it right out the gates. One injury update, a couple standouts from the day, and then we have some really good quotes from all three coordinators who spoke today. Tanner Engstrand, the OC, Steve Wilks, the defensive coordinator, and Chris Banjo, the special teams coordinator. So a loaded episode here. We'll get to the injury update first. Not a great one. Quinnen Williams tweaked his left calf and did not participate in team drills. He walked off the field under his own power, went into the facility. His day was over at practice. And I think if you're a top 20 to 25 player on this roster and you sustain an injury during practice, the best case scenario is just keep the player out the rest of the day, even if there's a chance that they can come back. I'm not terribly worried about Quinnen's calf injury, but we do need to, take a smart approach with this, because if he goes down at his position, we don't have many people waiting in the wings. So Quinnen Williams, tweaked left calf. He should be okay, hopefully. A couple standout players. I have 5. The first one, Brandon Smith, wide receiver. Multiple catches today, including a touchdown catch from Tyrod Taylor. And I have to, praise Tyrod Taylor as well. It was a great pre-snap recognition, according to Robbie Sabo. He kind of changed things at the line, got his players set up where they needed to be, hit a strike to Brandon Smith for a touchdown. So I love what I'm seeing from Tyrod Taylor. And I also love what I'm seeing from Brandon Smith, kind of getting up there, ascending up the depth chart, hopefully. Tyrod Taylor's the backup, so maybe Smith is playing with the 2s, and then all that leaves him to do is jump up and go play with the starters, go play with the 1s. So really excited for Brandon Smith. He's a guy to keep an eye on at the wide receiver position this camp and preseason. Leonard Taylor III is my second standout. Going through the tweets and the notes, it looked like he had several run plays where he was disruptive, and a would-be sack as well on Tyrod Taylor. So I'm excited to see him. It still looks like he might be with the second team based on the tweets and who's playing when he's on the field, but I'm very excited. This is a position where, outside of Quinnen, and we'll get to this with Wilks's quotes, but somebody's got to emerge. He shouted out a couple players, and Leonard Taylor III just needs to keep his name in the ring, right? He needs to keep his foot inside the crack of that door, keeping it open, keep his opportunity alive, and do whatever he can to make this 53, because I think he has enough flashes to be a good player. Does he have the consistency yet? Probably not. Last year, that was his big issue. So excited to see Leonard Taylor having some more good days. The third guy on my list is Quincy Williams. He was flying around all over the place today, 2 tackles for loss, and it's just continuing a trend of Quincy having a standout camp in its entirety, not just one day here or there. It's been every day with Quincy Williams pretty much. And Will Parkinson even mentioned on Twitter that Quincy is making plays during camp that not many linebackers in the NFL can probably make due to his speed, his range, his ability to get downhill and stop the run. So 2 tackles for a loss for Quincy Williams today. Great showing. They even had a fun clip of him riding a go-kart across the turf practice field on his way to meetings after practice today. So Quincy, the vibes are high. I think he's a player who should be trajecting back into an all-pro caliber type player. And I think Quincy Williams has the ability to do that in this defense. Another standout, Nick Folk, the newest addition to the team, went 6 for 6 on his kicks today. I believe 1, if not 2, were from 50-plus yards. So you really love to see that. Unfortunately, Mevis did miss 2 kicks off the post. I don't know what his total tally was, but I know he missed 2 kicks today. Does he stick on the team a little bit longer, get at least some preseason action? I'm not sure, but it is great that Nick Folk is coming in, hitting the ground running, going 6 for 6, and just picking up where he left off for the last few seasons in Tennessee. And then the final guy I need to point out today is Olu Fashanu. So many tweets blowing up about Olu looking smooth in pass pro. Connor Rogers specifically mentioning this. Smooth in pass pro, getting better in the run game from last year. I'm really excited for Olu. This is a guy that I was really high on in the draft process last year. Obviously, he only played in 6 or 7 games across 3 different positions for the Jets last season in his rookie campaign, but now he has the left tackle position on lock. He's the guy. I really think he's going to solidify that left tackle position for a long time coming for the Jets. So I really love Olu's name being mentioned as a standout. I have a couple quick other notes that aren't necessarily standouts, but Mason Taylor had a great touchdown catch from Justin Fields where he was schemed open. And Robbie Sabo alluded to this, and I trust Robbie's eyes when he says Tanner Engstrand schemed the play open and it was a good offensive play versus the defense. I trust that, and I think that's a huge emphasis on this offense. He mentioned spacing as well. If you have guys running in the same areas, it's very cloudy. It's very murky when you're trying to throw the ball. So I love that Engstrand has the spacing of the offense kind of down pat, and he's opening up lanes and scheming guys open, especially in the red zone periods. And then quick quarterback note, I mentioned Tyrod Taylor looked good on the Brandon Smith touchdown. He looked better today than Justin Fields did. Does that mean we need to panic and, start having a quarterback competition? No, absolutely not. I think there's things with Justin Fields that he does much, much better than Tyrod Taylor. But obviously, Tyrod's, veteran experience, he's going to be able to diagnose and read plays a little bit quicker. So in practice, he's going to be able to find the right guy quicker than Fields will. So Fields, not so great of a day, couple interceptions, probably could have had a couple more interceptions according to the beat, but I'm not, too panicked about the quarterbacks, and I'm not really ready to say we should have a competition there. Moving into some of the notes from the coordinators' press conferences today, all three spoke. Engstrand first. I think the first thing he said that stuck out to me was playing fast with your feet and reading a defense in the pass game through your feet. You have to be in the right area and have the right drop back so the ball comes out on time. Obviously, he's speaking about quarterbacks here, and I love this type of quote because when you play with timing in an offense, it is going to do so much more to help your run game as well, because everything's going to start looking alike, right? Justin Fields under center, single back, 2 tight ends to the right. They do a run play, maybe an outside zone, and then they come back, the next drive, and they have single back under center, 2 tight ends to the right, and they run a play action boot off of it. And then Justin Fields is able to use his feet and diagnose the defense and play with timing. All of these little notes that Engstrand is dropping to us is just night and day from what we've seen with, Nathaniel Hackett. And it brings me back to what I liked about Mike LaFleur and his ability to talk ball and scheme guys open, understanding that it's all timing based and rhythm based. And if you're getting thrown off with your quarterback's drop back, your receiver's at the top of his stem, he's ready to make his break and the ball's not coming out. So I'm really excited that he mentioned that first and foremost about the quarterbacks playing through your feet. That's a huge emphasis that I'd put on quarterbacks when I'm watching them in the pre-draft process. He talked about the offensive line and their run blocking. He mentioned AG saying they want to be a fast, physical, and violent outfit, and that the offensive line is basically taking that to heart. So you love that the offensive line, one, is gelling in camp. I love the fact that all 5 of these guys are healthy. We know who all 5 of these guys are going into the preseason, regular season. So I love the continuity, the consistency, and time on task with offensive line and really defensive line, but much, much so offensive line is so important, time on task. So I love that all these guys are playing fast, physical, and violent brands of football, because there's a couple guys, Olu, especially in the run game, maybe AVT. We want to see that mauler mentality, right? Throw them out of the club. So if we can get that mentality out of all 5 across the board, and they're, in lockstep with the messaging and the play style for this team, that's going to be a huge benefit to this offense. Today was a red zone practice at One Jets Drive, offense, defense, one-on-ones included. When asked about specifically game planning for red zone, Tanner Engstrand said we have to spend a lot of time on it. They said that they might even spend a whole day of the game week prep on just red zone installation, because everything gets tighter, everything gets faster. You have to diagnose, you have to be keyed in on what the defense is trying to do to you. And there was a good play that Justin Fields made in the red zone periods, he threw a flat route to Breece Hall for a touchdown where it looked like, based on the quick video the Jets team posted, Quincy and Jamian were both blitzing off the left tackle, so off of Olu Fashanu's side. Justin Fields drops back. It's in his line of sight now because he's a right-handed quarterback, and he was able to just fling it out to Breece Hall in the flat for a touchdown. So I love that he's putting an emphasis on red zone offense, and that's something that we were, led to believe was going to be a huge thing in the gold zone with Nate Hackett that never really came to fruition. He mentioned Olu's consistency being a huge thing, and what stands out to him the most so far is his consistency. And he mentioned that Membu is not making many, if any, mental errors so far. So yes, you're going to have your rookie lumps with Armand Membu, but he said it's not going to be in the form of a ton of mental errors. So he's not going to be lined up too tight or too close to the line of scrimmage and get a illegal formation. He's not going to be committing a lot of false start penalties. Obviously, the holdings and things like that happen during the play are different, but he said mental errors are not an area where Membu is bringing concern for him as a coach. He said going against the defense is a good measuring stick for success, and I think that's huge, right? When your defense is this talented, is this strong, is capable of being a top, 14, maybe even top 10 defense in this league, you have an offense going up against them and they're seeing the best looks, right? They're getting blitzed. They're getting pressured all over the place. They're seeing a ton of different shells. So I love this little back and forth complementary game of the OC, DC, and the offense and defense going at each other because the defense should win. Talent-wise, they win, right? But if the offense can get over and win a couple reps and win a practice, I think that's huge for the development of the offense. It's going to give them, like Engstrand said, confidence to go into the season saying, well, we can handle our defense, so we can handle any defense in the NFL. And that's a huge step for me. He was specifically asked about Garrett Wilson getting tackled, and he said it would be negligent of this coaching staff to not want Garrett Wilson to be tackled. And that was just a breath of fresh air, right? It feels good to know that the coaches understand the game of football in and out to the point where if your guys aren't getting tackled, they're going to get hurt in the beginning portions of the season because they're just not ready for it. So I loved the fact that he was putting an emphasis on the physicality and he wasn't backing down. The question, I believe, came from Kaz, and he said something about, are you worried about Garrett, getting hit on July 28th? And he immediately said, I want Garrett Wilson to get tackled. And I loved it. So I love the mentality from Engstrand, and I think not trying to get too over optimistic about it, but I think he could be the right guy for the job in terms of a schematic standpoint, play style standpoint, how he's going to get the guys to perform on Sundays. So really like what I heard from Engstrand. Steve Wilks then spoke to the media, and his first quote that I loved was, the identity of our defense is how our cornerbacks support and tackle. He's asked about Sauce, I believe, and he talked about how Sauce is a physical corner, good and press man. He understands the concerns about the tackling ability, but knows he's a physical player. So that was what sparked this quote. And if your identity is your corners and you're kind of playing from the outside in, he also mentioned that the secondary is going to drive the boat a couple weeks ago when he last spoke to them. So very intrigued on how the secondary versus defensive line is going to work out. We've been in the era with Saleh where we go as they go in terms of defensive line. So if they're doing everything through their cornerbacks and disrupting timing of the offense and, allowing their pass rush to get home just on coverage sacks, that's going to be huge for me. So really intrigued to see just which unit they flow through defensively. He was asked about Quincy Williams. He said, Quincy is striking and playing with his hands. He said he can play out in space versus tight ends and running backs, and he's very versatile. Those are all great things we've seen Quincy do. Obviously, the blitzing and the things like that nature that he didn't do a ton of, I'm more excited to see out of Quincy because I think there is more in his, his tool belt as a defensive player, as a linebacker. I think there's so much more to Quincy's game that's only going to help him elevate and get to that next level, possibly returning to the all-pro form. So loved what he said about Quincy. He was asked about his corners. Again, in the depth of the corners, he said, AZ, man, great pick. And he even said that he went up to Darren Muji and thanked him for all of the young guys on defense that he drafted him. He mentioned Malachi Moore's name as well. So really intrigued about these young DBs. And I've said it numerous times. It's just a matter of time before both of these guys are either starters or heavy rotational players at their position for this defense. Isaiah Oliver, he was asked about, and he doesn't seem worried about Isaiah Oliver, and I think that's because there's familiarity there. He's a veteran on the secondary. He said, leave him at safety. He's a plug and play guy. You can put him in at nickel and he can roll. So I hear that, and my immediate thought is, on the surface, the Jets are going to keep 5 safeties on the initial 53-man roster, and one is going to be Isaiah Oliver, who's going to moonlight as your backup nickel if something were to happen to Michael Carter. So very excited for Isaiah Oliver and the depth that they still have at a position of strength in cornerback. Not so much safety of being a position of strength, but secondary overall is now becoming a position of strength. And you find yourself 6-man, 7-man deep on your secondary of guys who can come in and out in different formations. You have your dime, your big nickel, which is 3 safeties. So a lot of different things that Steve Wilks will be able to do, and Isaiah Oliver will allow for more versatility. Let's see. He was asked about the defense overall, and he said they did a great job getting their hands on the ball. It's a point of emphasis, but it's the technique that they teach. So when I hear this goes back to my Sauce narrative, where if he can turn his head around 2 yards sooner, he's going to come away with interceptions. He's going to, develop his ball skills in this scheme. I really think that that's the case with a lot of these guys, and we're seeing it. Like, the takeaways are happening. Maybe, we get into the regular season and it's not as often as we like, but I do think takeaways from this defense is going to be a huge point of emphasis, like Wilks mentioned here, and it's going to set your offense up in short field situations that's going to go allow them to score some points. So I love that he's excited to get these players taking the ball away. When asked about the defensive line, he said everybody has to earn it. He said there's Quinnen Williams out there, and then everybody else is grinding every day. He gave name shout-outs to Jay Tufele, or Big J as he called him, Cowart, Peyton Page, and he even said Michael Clemens is having a fantastic camp. So you hear those, and you roll your eyes when you hear the last part about Michael Clemens, but I'm okay with Michael Clemens being on this team if he's used better or more efficiently than the last coaching staff did. I don't want to see the weight fluctuation going up and down 20 pounds each offseason, not really having a spot for him. If this coaching staff has a role for Michael Clemens, even if it's just in the short term, I am okay with Clemens being on the roster until we see that he can't do what the defense is asking him to do. If the coaches are asking him to do something in camp and he's doing well at it, then who are we to say he doesn't belong, right? If we get into the season and it's clear that what he's doing is not what he's being asked of him to do, then yes, we can revisit the conversation. But unfortunately, as much as we all don't like it right now, Michael Clemens is definitely going to be a major piece of this defensive line, at least in the short term. And then he was asked about Tanner Engstrand going against the offense, again, with the complementary of the coordinators here. I love this. He said, what Tanner is giving us is outstanding. It's making them communicate. It's making them play faster, see what they see, and react. It's not a matter of, slow approach to any of it. And I'm really excited for the back and forth that we've already started to see. You got, when we talk about position or camp battles, I don't want to just talk about the position battles like Tittman versus Myers at the center position, right? I want to talk about Garrett versus Sauce in one-on-ones. I want to talk about Brees versus Quincy in the backs on backers. I want to talk about Fashanu and Membu going up against McDonald and whoever's on the opposite side right now in camp. Obviously, it's Clemens, but there's going to be a rotation of guys there. So I want to see these battles. That's what I'm more interested in rather than the positional battles of who's going to be wide receiver 3 or who's going to be DT4. All that stuff's going to get ironed out. But going against good, talented players is going to be the main catalyst for success, at least in my opinion, throughout this camp process. And then just a couple names that Banjo gave some praise to, basically all the starters, right? He said Nick Folk hitting the ground running was great. He even joked and said that he called him coach when he came in for practice because Folk is 5 years older than Chris Banjo. He said Austin McNamara is doing well. And when specifically asked about him having the holder duties on field goals, he said Austin is doing a good job of getting the ball and getting the ball fast into the position where it needs to be. Obviously, you don't always catch it perfect. You got to put your laces out. Austin's doing a good job of that so far. He praised Hennessy and his leadership, his longevity on the team. He said he's still grinding, trying to get better. He has personal goals that he wants to do and succeed at, and we as coaches are going to help him get to those personal goals by helping him help the team's goals. So I'm really excited for the special teams unit, because even though it is a lot of inexperience at the punter position, you now have a lot of experience at kicker and long snapper. He was asked about Chris Boyd, and this was a question specifically from Eric Allen of the New York Jets, the team reporter. So this to me feels a little pointed for a reason. He was asked about Chris Boyd being an advantage and a benefit to special teams, and Banjo raved about having a guy like Boyd. So to me, if you want to, chalk this up as maybe Irv Charles doesn't have a job because of Chris Boyd, then that's fine. But I'm really excited for Chris Boyd coming in as a veteran, gunner, core special teams player, and really helping out this unit. So a lot of notes there, a long one here, a big recap, but we had the coordinators speak. I'm really excited to hear what every time that they speak. I just love picking up the little notes about their nuances and schemes. So day 7 in the books. I'll be back with the next practice recap after the Jets' next practice. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Hit the like button on your way out. Subscribe if you're new. We're on the road to 1,000 subs. We got to get there before the Jets take on Aaron Rodgers and the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm DTereman. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Let's go, Jets.